Welcome to the ParentCentre Webchat. I'm joined today by Lawson, who's going to be talking about school admissions. Thank you for joining us, Neil.
It's all right.
Okay, let's start then with our first question. How far in advance of the school year should applications be made by parents?
Well, in general, we're talking about a year in advance for secondary schools. If your child is due to start schools in next September 2007, then local authorities are now inviting applications for places, and they'll be operating with closing dates up around about the end of October, beginning of November, depending on where you live. So it's about now that parents should be getting hold of information, thinking about their choices and making their applications.
So will a parent have a better chance of getting a school place for their child if they apply early?
No, not really. You've got to apply within this period that is stated by local authority, so it'll give the parents a timetable. So as long as they apply by the closing date, then all the applications will be considered together after that.
Can a parent choose any school for their child?
Well, yes, they can. It's not strictly speaking a choice. The law says it's a preference, so they're stating a preference for the school they want. So they can list any schools they want to apply for in the state sector.
Is there a limit to the number of applications a parent can make?
Well, yes. The law allows them to make a minimum of 3 applications for a secondary school, and most areas have an application form, what they call a common application form, where the parent can list 3 choices of school. In some areas, in London, Birmingham for example, because there are more schools and it's easier to get to more schools, they can list as many as 6 schools.
How do schools decide who to offer places to?
Earlier in the year, they publish a prospectus for parents which will set out what their admission criteria are. Now, the criteria set out the priority that each school will give applicants if it's oversubscribed. So it may say, for example, that if you have a sibling at the school, you get priority. If the school's oversubscribed, maybe those that live closest will get priority for places. So that's how they decide who gets in.
Is there a limit to this number of schools? Actually, I think you've already touched on this. But again, is there a limit to the number of schools a parent can apply for?
Well, yes, and I suppose, because you're looking at the common application form for each area will state a number. Mm-hmm. So it may limit them to 3, 4, 5, 6 applications, depending on what the arrangements are locally. Yeah.
Can parents submit applications online?
Yes, in fact that's a new facility that all local authorities should have available from this year. And parents should be able to log on to the local authority website, find out about all the schools in their area, what their admission criteria are, what the admissions timetable is and how they should go about applying, and they can make their application online. And some areas will also be notifying results of applications online as well if that's what the parent wants.
What's the best way to get information about local schools?
Our range of approaches. The first is to look at the school's prospectus, which the local authority will issue. It's usually in hard copy. It's also available online. That will give a list of all the schools in the area, and it will give their admission arrangements, etc., and how to apply. The other way is to use the school search facility on DirectGov, and that enables you to go in, give your postcode, address or the area you're interested in and do a search for primary or secondary schools within a particular radius of that. Having found out about the schools in your area, you can do further research and look at Ofsted reports, which again DirectGov gives access to, or you can look at performance tables. So that's something that most parents use. You should also take a chance to go along to open days, have a look at the school, talk to staff, talk to other parents, and if you can, talk to pupils there and get a feel for what the school's like.
Okay. What happens if none of the schools a parent applies to can offer their child a place?
Well, they have a right of appeal, and this right of appeal is to an independent appeal panel. They'll be advised of this when they first are notified of the result of their application. So for secondary schools, for example, 1st of March is national offer date. On that date, every parent sent the result of their applications, and if they refused admission to any of the schools they wanted, they're told how to go about appealing against that. The panel will then listen to the reasons the admission authority for the school had for turning down their application. We'll listen to the parent's case for wanting a place at this particular school, and then we'll decide whether to uphold their appeal and offer them a place or not.
What happens if none of the schools applied to are able to offer the child a place?
Well, the local authority still has a legal duty to make sure that the child has access to education. So they should be able to offer an alternative. In fact, local authorities have powers to direct schools to admit additional pupils if all the schools in an area are full, so that they can make sure that every child has a school place if they need one.
Mm-hmm. Do schools keep waiting lists, and how do they work?
Some schools keep waiting lists. They don't have to, it's not a legal requirement, but where they do keep a waiting list, they have to keep one in line with the School Admissions Code of Practice, which says that they should apply their admission criteria when a place comes up. And what that means is that if a vacancy arises, they use the same criteria as they originally used to allocate places. So it doesn't matter whether when you applied, you don't get priority for applying early, so they're not maintained in date order.
And are waiting lists subject to change then?
Yeah, because they're not kept in date order, then they can be. You may have parents who've decided to take a place at another school, so their child comes off the waiting list, or you may have parents moved into an area and their child's joined the waiting list, but may live closer, for example, than another applicant, so they may overtake them on the waiting list.
So all of those things can affect where you are on the waiting list, essentially?
Yeah, it can all make a difference.
Okay. And what happens if an application is sent in late?
Much of that really depends on local policy, but what can happen is the application could be considered after all others. So if the parent moves into an area at a time where they just can't be considered along with everybody else who's applied, for example, for Year 7 places, then they'll be considered after everyone else has been allocated. So they might not get the school they'd most want.
Yeah. They
still have a right of appeal. The local authority still has its duty to find a school place for them. So they should still get access to education and hopefully still get the school they want.
What advice would you give to a parent who moves around a lot and would like information on finding the best school for their child?
If this child's already started at secondary school and the family then moved to another area and it's just not realistic to carry on attending the same school, then yes, they will have to make a new application. I think the best advice I can give at the moment is when they know where they're moving and roughly when they're going to be moving, then to make contact with the local authority, and the school admissions team there should be able to give advice on availability of local schools, which ones have places available, and how to go about applying.
Is it legal for a school to state that a child has to be christened in order to be eligible for admission?
Yes and no. It's legal to give priority for admission. So a faith on that basis. So a faith school could say, for example, we will give priority to baptised children of our faith. However, if it has less applications and places available, then it should offer places to all applicants regardless of whether they're of the faith or not.
So can a parent choose any school for their child to apply to go to then?
Yeah, they can apply for any school they like. They can get information from school prospectuses. They can get useful information on the ParentCentre and DirectGov under choosing a school, and that's what I'd advise them to do.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much for joining us today, Neil, to talk about school admissions. If you'd like more information on any of the subjects that Neil's talked about today, do go onto the website DirectGov and have a look under the Choosing a School section.